I'm not worried about like surviving 6 months, but I want to make sure I survive 6 weeks. And so other arrangements can be made. I have a friend who owns quite a bit of farmland in Nebraska, and I asked him last week. I said, because I noticed corn and soybean prices are starting to lift. I said, have you sold forward your crop for next year? He said, not planning on it. So the farmers are, at least the ones that are fairly well capitalized, they have a good sense that next year input prices are going to be higher.
And with PayPal making it possible to buy, sell, and hold cryptocurrency on its platform, support is starting with Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, and possibly more in the future. I was able to profit myself because I learned to trade through Trade Genius Academy on the crypto side. I took part in various courses, personal coaching, chat rooms, Signals trading tool. That's where I look for price signals in cryptocurrency from Bob Kudla at TradeGeniusAcademy.com, who also offers other signature trading tools for stocks, exchange-traded funds, binary options, and commodities. All you need is an internet connection to get started. Interact with Trade Genius community, fellow traders, and certified Trade Genius trades, alongside professionals who generate revenue for themselves in the stock market every single day. Live buy and sell alerts text to your phone, built for both new and experienced traders. So what are you waiting for? Sign up and see what the hype is all about at TradeGeniusAcademy.com. And use the promo code Thanksgiving for 40% off all non-bundled items. Click on the link in the description box below, and now on with the interview. Good afternoon, everyone. Today with me, Bob Kudla. You know, we always have a great conversation looking around the corner. And with everybody focused into today, let's just skip that. You already can go find your own feeds. There's a billion things for you to look at. We're just going to add to the distraction, the noise there. We want to look out into 2021. Because myself and Bob both think that 2020, yeah, you thought it was weird, strange, and unusual. You haven't seen anything yet. What's coming in 2021 is the real precursor of these changes that are going to hammer home we're not in Kansas anymore. So looking out at food pricing, just cryptocurrency getting and gaining into its second bull run here, the way the stock market's poised and things that are happening that are so strange and unusual right now. And also the trucker strike, I did want to point that out. Be aware, trucker strike coming up here on the 26th through the 30th or 29th. That'll affect supply chains maybe through Thanksgiving. But let's look out into 2021. Give you a glimpse around the corner. And I know before our interview here, Bob had a couple good ideas he wanted to start with. And then we're just going to go. You know, again, we don't really talk that much before we get on here, but we're just going to roll with it. And I hope, again, if you find anything of interest, put in the comment below and tell us if you agree or disagree with some of our points that we're making here, and make it a new conversation in the comment board below. And as always, tradelikeagenius.com, tradegeniusacademy.com. Both of those will take you right over, and you can find Bob right there. Thanks for joining me. It's going to be an interesting conversation. Let's look at 2021.
Yeah, and then I think 2021 started today. So let me explain. So we've had, since November 1st, we've had basically the S&P 500 has gapped up 4 times, and it moved up 12%. And a lot of that has to do with the unwinding of what we call the election uncertainty. And so that played itself out today. They had some bizarre announcement from Pfizer. They called it a sneak peek into their vaccine trials that were trending positively per them. And the market literally went up almost 5%. Now that is unheard of. Now, let me be clear. That was the S&P 500. What we noticed right away was the NASDAQ, where the technology stocks in, didn't have that move. And so what we said it to our subscribers is that today is likely to be what's called a gap and crap, meaning the market gaps up, meaning the open today in the market was higher than the close on Friday, and the amount was absurdly high. I mean, we were talking 125 S&P points, which is just unheard of. You know, these are those are blow off type of numbers. You see those a lot more when the market's going down than when it goes up. The market likes to go up on what they call an escalator, goes down an elevator. Well, this one went right up to the penthouse in one move, and basically it sold off the whole day. And so what we look for there is if it stops where it opened, and it broke right through that, which tells us that the market look like it probably has hit its highs for the cycle. And a lot of it had to do with the political environment. There's a lot of warring and feuding, but also it just went up too fast. And this is what we were expecting, is that, look, the market is extremely overvalued, and now we have political uncertainty, and then we have geopolitical certainty. And this is the area that Dave and I, we kind of specialize in food in China, I call it. And we should change this podcast. We should just call it Chinese food, because the Chinese are trying to walk this thing by officially saying we don't really want to congratulate to the winner, but on the side channel, they're saying, well, we expect Joe Biden will want to work with us the way we want to be worked with, meaning you'll kowtow to me, or we'll release more sex tapes on your son. And then also the Chinese, for the very first time, I'm sure you noticed this, Dave, bought rice from America. And what that means for us is that, hey, not good news because they're balance of payment. They will drive the price of food in the United States to intolerable levels, because they can basically buy out our whole food supply to feed their people. Now, this happened in Argentina, where, and I think it was Argentina, where the people actually started to riot because basically the Chinese were just sucking all the product out the door, and the farmers were happy to sell at a higher price, but left the people there with food they can't afford. You tie it in with the crazy people on the left that want us to be vegan, right? And the only eggs they want us to eat are milk chocolate eggs, and I think we have a recipe for disaster. And this is important because food price rises does not allow the central banks to continue the easy monetary policy that they have. That means interest rates go up. So we're looking at a potential perfect storm: rising interest rate, rising food prices, lockdown potentials, and you're looking at basically the meltdown of the organized economies. And so that's what's in front of the market. Now, they'll start noticing this stuff more and more, especially when we find out who's going to be the leader. Now, Trump stays in and the Republicans hold the Senate, then you'll see a lot of this abate, because Trump will just put a kibosh on it. But if it happens to be Joe Biden getting elected with a Republican Congress, the mantra is that it's deflationary, because there'll be no stimulation of the fiscal environment. But if the Democrats control it all, then the United States can go into a pretty much of a free fall.
Hyperinflation inbound, if that were to happen. And, I did want to, you're right, when Argentina started to lock down their grain supplies because it was being completely bought out, riots in the streets, and it really made the government switch over and say, all right, we're going to stop.
Right.
But right at the border up there with Brazil, they were coming in and offering a premium of sometimes 20% over what the local market rate was, paying cash for it at the border, bringing it over to Brazil. Brazil had no export restrictions. And then there was a whole shell game going on, and then it still was to that point where they had to send military up to even block off. And I'm talking about little tiny boats going across the river. So somebody was getting a arbitrage on that to bring it across to Brazil, on the border there where they have the river. And would we see the same thing here in the States? Because if you haven't seen, soybean prices are at a 4-year high. I was out at my farm earlier and drove back here to talk to you tonight. And they're harvesting the soybeans out there right now. So it's soybean harvest time here in Tennessee. But with this push, and that's a scary omen. If China's importing rice, generally in the Pearl River Delta area and that southern region, they're able to grow enough rice to feed their people and export some. This year, with those 2 flood zones that connected for the first time ever recorded in Chinese history, not only did the grains, as we know, corn and soybean, get really affected, but also there was a huge wipeout in the rice crop. So what we're seeing with China happening right now is just the very cusp of their demand that's going to be increasing. And farmers at the same time are seeing the same thing. So the farmers that did survive through this, and there were some higher areas of ground and you got more northerly areas, Heirloom, but it got really hit by the typhoon. I forget the name of the typhoon, went up there, wiped out a bunch of that. But whoever survived as a farmer did not want to sell into the state mandated price scheme because they knew they can get a higher price. Again, just like in Argentina, they went across the border with Brazil, but here in China, the local farmers don't want to sell. They're hoarding their crops knowing that, hey, if we just wait a few weeks, another week, whatever, we're going to get a far higher price. So it's a bit of both happening here. The demand is insatiable because so many crops have been lost. It's literally the largest crop wipeout in a couple hundred years. I'll be conservative. But then the Chinese farmers themselves are hoarding inside, trying to make an extra buck. So that just turned into a bad as well. So wherever you're looking across the planet, whether it be in financial markets, which you are much more attuned to, and myself following the grains and seeing what's happening, especially in China, how they're trying to manage these massive floods because they lost everything that was stored, right? I'm not going to say everything, but an enormous amount that was in their storage warehouses and facilities. That was those floods were so massive that people were trapped in their buildings. They couldn't ever get supplies into cities. I don't know how many people died in their buildings that never got out because they were trapped by floodwaters. And there was just so many people in these major cities. You get a city flooded in of 10 million people and they hadn't had deliveries in there for more than a month and people couldn't get out of their homes. What do you think is going to happen? So now it's all about cleanup and trying to repair. But those people are hungry, and any stockpiles that China did have, a majority of them have been washed away or rendered non-usable due to floodwaters. And it's just going to continue here. So yeah, you're right. Once we hit these higher food prices, how many places in the world can continue to supply China?
They can't. And, and this is time for one of our advertisements is that you should buy yourself a 25 or 50 pound bag of rice and put it into a plastic container and just see, at any rate, so you're just not stuck not having something. So I do that with that and flour. I have the other thing I've done lately too is I bought actually frozen dough too. And I'm not worried about like surviving 6 months, but I want to make sure I survive 6 weeks. And so other arrangements can be made. I have a friend who owns quite a bit of farmland in Nebraska. And I asked him last week, I said, because I noticed corn and soybean prices are starting to lift. I said, have you sold forward your crop for next year? He said, not planning on it. So the farmers are, at least the ones that are fairly well capitalized, they have a good sense that next year input prices are going to be higher. We also lucked out on MOS that it had earnings and it pushed down. So people need to put that on their watch list if they like to trade. And because I think when we come out of this winter, which is going to be pretty brutal for the plains, is that they're going to have to throw some fertilizer on these crops to push the harvest dates and compress them. People don't realize that you can compress a harvest date by just dumping fertilizer onto the crops. And so they'll do that with corn if they get a late start. They'll do that with soybeans. All those soybeans are we have a pretty wide soybean range actually in the country. So but corn especially, you'll see that if they get a late start because of late winter, is that you don't have corn, you have to replace it with soybean. If you can't get soybeans in the ground, you got to replace it with barley or millet. You just keep going down the quality level. So just keep an eye on that. That's going to be huge. And then you're going to have these crazies. If the Democrats get in, they're going to be trying to tell you what you can eat and how you can eat it. These are the people were telling us how great bugs were. These are the people that brought us Beyond Meat. They're going to make sure that they have the ribeye for themselves, and it always reminds me of the passage in the book of Revelations where basically the one of the angels says, it's going to take you a day wages just to earn enough to buy barley, which means basically your daily bread. But the oil and the wine shall not be harmed, which basically means that the wealthy will have enough money to buy whatever they want to eat and drink, But the poor people, and this is a thing in the U.S., we're not used to using a lot of our monthly income for food. And for whatever reason, the elites don't like that. They want us to be, they basically want to be totally locked down. Rent, food, healthcare, and nothing else, and basically totally dependent on them. And food, once food starts going up, I think things are going to get real. And I think we'll tie into your trucker comment that you'll probably want to bring up right now.
Yeah, and I do want to add one other comment. Bob is a great chef. We've talked about him cooking, so little home cooked meals and preparation. My secret, okay, you're going to buy the rice. Mine is buying 50-pound bags of hard red winter wheat from the co-op, the farmer's co-op. Every county has one. And having a grain mill, both electric and hand, both. So then I can make my own flour with the hard red winter wheat, non-GMO, by the way. So you can go into your farmer's co-op and request that. Now, that's delivered, though. I mean, from your local area, yeah, you have your local seed providers, but hard red winter wheat, we don't grow that in Tennessee. That's brought in by a truck. So that trucker strike, it's called Stop the Wheels, and I'm glad you brought it up there for a second. This is a news bulletin for all of you out there, and take this seriously. They are going to shut the entire country down right at Thanksgiving. So for 4 full days, from the 26th through the 29th, not a single truck will roll on the roads. And it's not about wages or anything. It's about taking away their entire livelihood with this Green New Deal. They understand. Their quotes are, you're going to take away the fracking and you're going to remove all of the fossil fuels. How are we supposed to live is basically what they're saying. And we don't support this. Your entire food supply chain is predicated on us having those fuels. So why don't we let you see what it's going to be like without having your food delivered for 4 days, because we're not going to use fossil fuels. Good luck during Thanksgiving. And it's called Stop the Tires. And caveat here, they do ask anybody that's transporting medical supplies not to participate because that's such an essential thing there. But as we look out, the food itself, you talked about shorter growing seasons here. Let me throw you a couple headlines that are popping off right now. If I can get my window back open here off of Electroverse. So these seasons are going to be shortened. And when Bob's referencing here, and you can ratchet up a growth season by pumping the fertilizer and potash on it. But you're going to reach that saturation point where you start burning the plants. And there's only so much you can put on them before they start to quote unquote burn. So check these headlines out. Las Vegas, coldest November 8th ever recorded. 100-year-old cold record smashed in Reno, Nevada. Merapi is ready for a major eruption. That'll be a cooling event if it does. That's right on the equator there in Indonesia. Sydney, Australia, coldest November 5th ever recorded, breaking records back to 1881. Record cold in Brazil. Record cold across South America, polar blast. And it just almost twice as much snow in the Atlantic Canada. Like the forecasters couldn't even get it right how much snowfall there was going to be, more than doubled what they had said. And it goes on and on and on and on. So it's all about these shrinking growth seasons. And this is really the caveat, I think, is I feel that all this chaos that you're seeing is to cover for this, because the powers that are in power in so many places, and you could name the XYZ list of organizations internationally or nationally, whatever it is, they've known this cycle was coming for at least 20 years. They could have warned everybody to get ready, start growing your own food, everybody get a victory garden, let's tweak our agriculture, bring it indoors, supplement outdoors with indoors, but they let everybody go. And this is I personally feel all the chaos is to mask what you're seeing here with the food crop losses. They're unpredictable, Bob, and I'll leave it there.
Yeah, well, the COVID's the same thing. So they want to reset the currencies. So so let's invent COVID. They want to. I think they thought if they got the Green New Deal, they thought they would convert people over to actually accepting it. But once people understood what that really meant, they basically rejected it. So they needed something a little bit more powerful. So they came up with this this pandemic scheme that now has basically 99% of the people who even get it survive it. Not even anything worse than we had 10 years ago, but they're using it now as a cover, saying we had to shut the world down because of this very bad virus. So now we need to basically get rid of the debt. And by doing that, they're covering for themselves. They also want to blame anything with food shortages basically on the right wing. So that's why they keep banging on global warming or the climate change, if you will. But I think the American people, I think a lot of people around the world are already sweet to that. And, and for me personally, today's the first day I wore pants and sneakers. So that's how cold it was in Southern California when I woke up this morning. I could have gutted it out, but I got into winter wear. So, and then to totally change subjects on you, we talked about.
Can I change the subject on you? I wanted to ask you. Okay, yeah. So then, how do you protect us financially? I mean, you're always into the trades here. So looking forward, I mean, what types of things can we look at to protect financially? I'm always focused on the food and the different types of grain crops and whatnot, but you have a whole different gamut, a different spectrum of things you're looking at, from energy and everything else. So, I mean, if I'm going to ask you a personal question, like how do I protect myself and what things should I be looking at in the markets other than the food? Because we know that's going to definitely take off here. But I want to protect myself against the hyperinflation, the never-ending money printing that will be if Biden gets in. We're going to go, printing 30 trillion here in the next few years, and that's not going to be very helpful for us in holding value. So, I mean, how do I protect myself and hold value at the same time?
Get your notebooks out, everybody. So you're going to want to own some silver, SLV. I'm not talking about necessarily. I'm going to take this from a trader's perspective, so I don't want any blowback on you need to physically stack and stuff like that. I want to talk about how you can use it in the stock market. It's more liquid that way. You're going to try to fight your way to a numismatic dealer, right? You may get robbed or killed by the time you get there, depending on bad things get. So, when you're trading, okay, you're in and out of these things in a day. So SLV you want to have in your portfolio. You want to have MOS, which is ag chem, in your portfolio. You absolutely want to have Bitcoin or GBTC in your portfolio. You're going to want to have a supermarket stock in your portfolio. Just look one that's closest to you. And you're going to have a food producer like the Chinese bought Smithfield. You want to have like a Hormel, because what happens is food prices rise. They're buying it cheaper than they're selling it. So they get what's called an inflation good guy. Grocery stores are the same way. So the supply chain during inflation is the person passing the inventory is going to be selling it at a higher price than they paid for it until the inflation abates. So those are the areas that you want to be in, those areas that we're trading. And then you absolutely want to avoid the NASDAQ because it's extremely overvalued. The market today rejected NASDAQ. It was going red before the rest of the market. That trade is over. And so especially since the games they pulled on the social media content producers, the election's over, engagements are going to collapse. People are finding alternatives. So you want to get out of tech. And then if Trump gets in, you want to add industrial metals to it, like steel, copper, uranium. Energy is kind of a mixed bag. I'm not quite sure where it's going to go. We're producing way more oil than what's necessary. And if the Green New Deal becomes a thing, then we're going to have probably even too much short term, drive the price down until they get rid of production, and then price of oil will go through the roof, and it'll be coming from imported sources. So I would say energy is kind of phase two under a communist regime, and that's how we're trading it. So I'm looking out. Right now, you can't really look out past December because we don't know who's going to officially win the election. We have our druthers, we have our thoughts, but until we know for sure, we're going to be trading in that bubble. Then once we get that bubble done, then we have another bubble in the United States, is that we don't know who's going to win those runoffs. Once we know the runoff, and then in January, I think we're going to have a good runway for 2021. My personal view is that I think Trump's going to win, and I know the Republicans will hold the Senate. So I'm leaning deflationary, but that doesn't mean everything is going to fall in price. You and I talked about this before. I coined a theme. I called it inflationary depression, where actually things that you don't want are going to collapse in price, like assets that you own. The things that you need are going to stay elevated in price, like food and I think that's what's going to happen. We're going to get the worst of all worlds. So that's the area where that's how we're positioned now. So right now we're short the NASDAQ and we're long the metals and miners, and we're going to be getting longer food